Hey, rise and shine, up and at 'em. It's a phenomenal new day. You're officially tuned into WHPS TV 33, and we are in our Virgin Islands studio. Oh, I just love it. Like, I needed to feel this tropical energy on today, and that's how I feel in our studios. I mean, that's what happens when you just have all the innovation and creativity that TV 33 offers you. So whether you are tuning in through TV 33 or Comcast 90 or Roku or Facebook Live or Smoke Signal, you're here this morning, and we appreciate it. And so thank you. I'm very excited. Everyone, if you didn't understand the energy that I had on yesterday, I was part of the squad. We had phenomenal squad goals yesterday with our phenomenal for lack of a better word, you know what they used to call them, the four horsewomen, the four of them, the squad that are pushing back on government as we know it. And I shared with us the comments, of course, that President Trump said that that they need to go back to where they came from and fix what's going on there. Now, if indeed I'm from Minnesota, I need to go back to Minnesota. If I'm from Georgia, I need to go back to Georgia. I mean, Trump, what do you mean? They need to go back because they were women of color. And if this whole fight is about what Israel looks like in the opinion, or just to be able to push back because you don't agree with the positioning of one person. And the truth of the matter is, I really wanted us to question why we believe what we believe, how we believe what we believe. And it starts off with just the image. Because you have four very unique women who present themselves in such a way that based on that, people create a bias on how they look. The conversation is that you're supposed to look a certain way to be a politician. You know, they did the studies back in the day. Remember those who were in this region when you had Kwame Malik Kilpatrick against Gil Hill. And so they slated them against each other. So this young, strong, strapping man, and then this more mature, smaller frame individual, and the image play had something to do with your psychology of who you believe would be the best to lead you, the perception of leadership. And as it pertains to America, what have they always presented to you? That a white man, a mature-looking white man with a suit and, you know, the strategic colors of corporate America, black, brown, very conservative. You don't see black, blue. You don't see any grays. You don't see any browns. When have you ever seen a president jump up there with a brown suit? And normally it's a black, blue, sometimes if they're special, a red tie. Because it's a look. You're supposed to have a cropped haircut Trump kind of dispelled all that if you have hair anymore, but whatever the case may be. And so then that was the perception, and that is what we bought into because that is what the image that you see all the time is what it should be, who you think it is, who they are. And they're the best to lead you as they go into foreign countries and talk to other individuals and in the round tables of the United Nations, because this is the look that displays America. Well, no, not so much. And so the young ladies, the squad, presented that, guess what? No. And I showed you the clip. And I really took offense to Gayle King. And I believe, we know she's Oprah's bestie and all of that. And I believe that she probably thinks she is reincarnating and channeling Oprah. I'd love to know if she actually has the conversations with her to shape her narrative as she attempts to have interviews and conversations with anyone. But I really didn't appreciate her positioning. Because if you recall in the clip, everyone, and if we need to see the clip again, we can. But if you recall in the clip, her whole position was, based on how they teach you to act. Well, you're supposed to be a freshman congressperson and you're supposed to go in and be quiet and you're supposed to learn and sit back and wait your turn. So heaven forbid you question Nancy Pelosi. Heaven forbid you have a voice that is very outspoken in opposition to what the party overall is suggesting, because then that shows dissension in the party. But we're talking about dissension in a party that really does not, and I'm saying it, does not address all the issues specific to people of color, other than the word of saying that you're a Democrat. I said it. We can have the question, we can go and we can debate all day long. And I'm not saying that the Republicans are any better with creating policy that's going to help us with our own vision. But at the end of the day, think about it. Out of all the issues, and they tried to, I think there were some hidden files and some other things that were brought out yesterday as well, something for Trump. Out of all of the horrific and negligent and questionable acts, and people say, he really didn't do anything to actually get impeached. Well, we know why they impeached Clinton. Now, what did that have to do with the Oval Office? But all the things that have happened under this watch, they say it's not enough to impeach him. Or the truth of the matter is that Nancy Pelosi has used that to increase her platform, to increase her marketability, to increase her perception of control. And so why would I remove you out of the way? Because all my conversations are that, guess what? I can. This is what I can do. We're gearing up, and but if you support me because I'm the speaker, then please don't think that it's about the position of the people, what is best for the people. It's not. And so then when you question these young ladies as to how if they are actually outwardly combating or questioning her leadership, then we have another woman of color say, well, shouldn't you have done it a certain way? And I love that the pushback was, no, maybe you should be asking a different question. Maybe the question should be, why are they not addressing what we're stating? Why are they not being open to what we're suggesting we need to make sure that our communities are whole? Because the truth of the matter is that they understand that they are there for the will of the people. They're not there to increase their purse strings. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. Because everyone else, you all remember a couple years ago, I brought in the documentation that shows what the wealth is of all the sitting Congress people. And there are congressional members that are millionaires, multimillionaires. And so you tell me what, especially if they didn't have that wealth entering into the political foray, then you tell me how did they then amass it? What does it look like? And then sadly enough, when we got down to our own emeritus, John Conyers, I think he was at $150,000. So clearly that showed that he did not use that office to line his own pockets. And so at the end of the day, I want us to revisit all of that and talk about biased. What is a biased? Because we're going to continue that conversation on this morning. And then we're going to get to, at the top of the hour, that 8 o'clock hour, El Chapo. I kind of hinted at it yesterday. I take offense. I have a problem with El Chapo, being captured and brought over to America. I just don't even understand how we then claimed rights to El Chapo. And then you put him, for all this time and 11-week trial or whatever the case may be, only to give him life in prison. And then you position it that, okay, he has a purse somewhere, like a bounty. Well, in the pirate terms, they call it a booty of $12.5 billion they assess. And so they're on a scavenger hunt. They're on a treasure hunt. You're trying to get his money. And so you say you lock him up and I'm going to get his money. I'm going to find his money. And you heard his defense attorneys, you'll hear them say, well, to this date, I don't know what they're talking about because where's the money at? And so America now is looking for his money. Is it all about the money? Is everything always about the money? Because then we'll juxtapose that to what OxyContin looks like in America. It is an American family that mass produced and made and created OxyContin that Pure Pharma has been producing. And their bounty is much more than El Chapo's. Why haven't we brought them to trial? You know how many people overdose on OxyContin, which then leads into fentanyl? We don't have those conversations. Oh, but then what we do is call it a disease, and then we implement our own war on drugs and then have money to say we want to go into treatment. But that same company, Pure Pharma, now provides something that is to help you either wean off of the drug, the clip will show it, or something as a remedy for the addiction. Isn't that the contradiction? So I'm going to provide you with the drug and I'm going to give you something that helps you. But guess what? It's all about the money because I control them both. My company controls them both. Why haven't we brought them to trial? Why haven't we charged them for the actual intent, cruel intent and punishment? Because it's a conscious act. You know what is in OxyContin. You know the addictive principles and components in that pill. And so they consistently produce it. Doctors consistently prescribe it. Addictions occur, and then mayhem happens. But you've never heard about them going to trial to secure their monies. Why? Because that's a big business in America. And I would venture to say it'd be very interesting to find out how many people actually have investments in that company. And so much so then that all that had to be approved by the FDA. Hello, that's federal. So you understood. So you all get where I'm going with this biased. So you have people who are actually speaking up against what this looks like because it really doesn't benefit the people. I'm going to do everything I can to assassinate your character. So much so that there's a clip that we'll prepare to show where they're suggesting that if Trump, they're leading right into his conversation because he wants people to believe that this is the type of dissension that the Democratic Party will present in America if you elect these types of women into office. And so that's why you should stick with the Republicans. And so if indeed that's the case, they're playing right into his play. But the truth is, it's right into his play if you all believe it. All of this goes back to you having a realistic understanding and expectation of what you want for you, and then identifying with a candidate that best fits the conversation. And because of that, they'll understand, of course, the parameters of legislation. We know that that's where lobbying comes in. We know that's where big business comes in. And then they give the monies, and their goal is to have you then do what they say. That's the Geppetto to your Pinocchio. But at least you have an onus that says, this is what I actually chose and why I chose it, and the expectation of what you're going to do for me when I'm in office. When you're in office. Well, actually, I said it right. When I'm in office. Because all they're supposed to do is represent you. Do you get it? And I'm going to add that into a component. The Michigan Marijuana Advisory Group just issued a preliminary overview of what their social equity plan looks like. I get a little bit of it, and I'm not impressed at all. It's a biased. Because if I need help, if you know that I don't have access to the Capitol, you giving me a percentage discount makes no difference. I don't care if it was 25%. On Wednesday's show, I'm not going to infuse that into this conversation, but a couple of the factors that I'll give you 25% off here, 25% off there. If you qualify, there is a potential for you to be able to get 60% off. Well, guess what? If I'm still at $500,000, 60% of that puts me down to what? 200,000? 240? Stop. And that's supposed to help me? But then again, if you don't have anyone that's sitting on the advisor group that looks like the people in the 19 communities that you have identified that are of disadvantage, then, because I promise you, everyone on that list, the 19 communities, there is not one representative on that board, that group, that is a representation of someone who comes from those communities. Don't you think that's ironic? Oh, but they didn't even think that you think about it. Because again, you're dealing with people who are not walking in your shoes, but they create policies in which you're supposed to be governed by. But how can I best tell you what works for you when I don't have that experience? I don't have the empathy for it. I've never had a inkling of what it looks like. There's nothing that identifies me in that space. And that's across the board. But I'm supposed to create policies and have conversations that make it better for you. It's no different. I told you all before, I have the pleasure of working for an amazing team and campaign coming up out of Baltimore. And we had the conversations all the time, specifically as it pertains to crime. So there were some reports on a daily basis that there were some 14 to 15 incidents that have happened in the city. Perhaps maybe half of those might at least have led to death. And so now the city has adopted this whole crime plan and under Trump's initiative, and they have monies that are coming in for technology. And of course, they say sensitivity training and a mental health piece. You can't look at someone and tell if they're suffering from mental health issues. So how does that work? So it sounds good. You say, oh yeah, okay, we're going to train them. I can't look at you and tell that you're suffering from mental health. But everyone, because that's the conversation and because you're not thinking through what's been presented to you, then you're letting someone that you believe that's in some authority dictate that this is what we're going to do to alleviate the crime in the community. That doesn't work, everyone. It doesn't work. There's an amazing study that Yale presented coming up out of Yale education, and some phenomenal psychologists that's talked about there's a mental component. There's a medical approach that needs to be taken to address crime. Specifically in urban communities. Absolutely. We're all suffering from PTSD. I don't know why you all don't understand that. That is the reparation for black folk. Everyone who grew up, everyone, I believe every black person in America suffers from PTSD. And then there are, of course, different levels of it, different severities of it. But of course, in the research that they did, specific to young people growing up in urban communities, that the PTSD is more harmful in degrees of levels than someone who just came out of war. Did you get it? So you're walking around every day suffering from PTSD, whether the crime is inflicted directly upon you, the violence directly upon you, but merely being in that environment has created something inside of you that has caused you to suffer so much so that it is higher than our veterans who've gone over and fought in wars. And we thank you for your service. But the everyday war right here has an impact. And so then if you are not taught how to balance that, how to maneuver through that, try to understand the situations from which you are in and where you have come from, how then are you supposed to be a productive member of society? And then that's what they'll use to then incarcerate you. That's what then they'll use to inflict a far stronger support and stresses upon you and governance and policing upon you because of these actions. Come on. Think about that. That's the bias. And so that's where we're going to go with this today. I'm going to open us up with a clip. I'm going to share a video with Sean and see if he can pull it up for me. We're going to work on it. But let me just give you, first of all, the definition of bias, if you all didn't know that. So bias, as Merriam-Webster defines it as, 1, a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. Quote, there was evidence of bias against foreign applicants. Some of the synonyms are prejudice, partiality, partisanship, favoritism, unfairness, one-sidedness. Another component, cause to feel or show inclination or prejudice for or against someone or something. Reader said the paper was biased towards the conservatives. So every day we live in these biased. And if you don't understand the bias that are being presented to us in all facets, it's everywhere. An amazing caller yesterday, I believe that was his first time calling in. He specifically noted about how he believes that men of Arab descent who come into the communities prey on black women and disrespect black women. And I told him he made a very valid point, and I wanted to stay right there because I didn't want to push that component into the conversation, but it's definitely fitting for where we are right now. We have a bias for them because as an outside looking in, we don't like and believe that they disrespect our women and they prey on our young girls, and maybe they flash their monies or what they have or the potential of their means to get attention, and then what we believe is exploiting these young women. But the truth of the matter, and Sean and I were discussing it, is that black men do the same thing. They do the same thing. So, and the gentleman was so eloquent in saying, well, we can't do that to their women. Absolutely not. Because they don't do that to their women. Did you think about that? You don't see any of their women out you don't see them in videos. You don't see none of that. Everything that people perpetuate in our culture, you don't see them. Do you get that? And so there's a bias in that. So we can treat our women any kind of way. They see us treating our women any kind of way. They emulate how we treat our women, and we don't think about how we treat our women. We don't think that that is an example for the world to see, that if you have them up here and you're hitting them on the backside and everything is sensationalized and you want them to look like a Barbie doll and something that is unreal, and you have all these other things and the image of what we support in our communities as we see through video. And maybe the bigger issue is that because they control music and media, and then that's what is the conversation. I mean, wasn't there a dialogue that has been going on about Jermaine Dupri? He made a statement that, all these rappers nowadays, these women, only thing they rap about are their private parts. And so there was some clapback from Cardi B, and because she's like, well, not all women, but if that's all you all want to hear, if I talk about something else, you all don't play me on the radio. So my body parts is what gets you engaged and gets me spins, and that's what I'm going to talk about. But she went on to list some phenomenal women who are a lyricist who don't talk about that, but they don't get any play. And so if indeed that is what we perpetuate, and that's the look that we perpetuate, you tell me, and maybe this is my bias, you tell me how Cardi B looks. And I get it. She looks that way for her, and I'm just using her as an example, for her profession. So she came out of the world of entertainment, stripping, and now she's a artist. Okay. What else would she do with that look? And maybe I'm just quiet because I want you to think about it. I'm waiting for you to tell me. And so many young women, old women, women, period, are trying to look that way. You tell me, what type of job will you get when you look like that? What do you get? Tell me. And that's the image that we perpetuate. Everybody wants hair down to their behind. Everyone wants the enhanced breast job. Everyone wants the small waist. Everyone wants the immense posterior. Everyone wants the full lip. Everyone wants to look like this model, this doll, this whatever this is. Because the truth of the matter is, I mean, women of color are voluptuous in and of ourselves. We're not skinny. There's a thickness to us in a good way. Not all of us are blessed with that, but a lot of us you all remember back in the day, the Hottentot Venus. And they pulled her up and would put her on display in the circus because of her voluptuous shape. And of course, Caucasians had never seen anything like that. So they would put her on display. Isn't that interesting? So see historically where we're going? So you're talking about back in the 1600s, Hottentot Venus was out. And then today in 2019, we still perpetuate that same look. We still put our women on display. To whose entertainment? And then for those who might not look a certain way, I tell you all the time, when I was on the East Coast, wild natural hair, no problems. Hey, when I got back here, men told me, mature men told me, well, you need to straighten your hair. What do I need to straighten my hair for? Because you'll get a man. Men here don't like natural. Are you kidding me? We all came out of natural. What did your mama look like before she got, I'm just like, but do you realize that? And so we've played into a bias of what we think is beautiful, a bias of what the image that we think that black women should look like. And then those who don't, you don't get any play. And you all know me, I will be the first. If I want to throw on some hair and I cut my nails, but that was just symbolic of my cannabis business, and I liked them long and the green and whatever, because you all know I didn't normally do and get my nails done. So, but that was my thing. That's my preference, but I own businesses. So in the space that I'm in, I'm creative enough to be able to, I can get suited and booted, or if I want to look, around the way, I can do it all. And there isn't anyone that can necessarily go up against me or put something against me or hinder my opportunity and access into a certain space, because I'm not going to punch someone's clock. There's a bias in that. And the bigger conversation maybe that I want us to get to is that we perpetuate that on each other. It's not even about what they do to us. I tell us all the time, is if I'm pointing the finger, it's the three that are coming back at us, because I want us to have that conversation. And so those are things I want to think about today. Let me open us up with this quote, and it's from Albert Einstein. Bias against the Negro is the worst disease from which the society of our nation suffers. Let me give that to you again. Bias against the Negro is the worst disease from which the society of our nation suffers. That's bias against us. You saw it yesterday. You see it on the forefront of what is happening in Congress. You see it every day when you have municipalities that are suffering, especially those that have majority people of color or poor people, socioeconomic conditions. That's a bias. And so that means that I innately, and that's why it's so important, I might have to go to a break, and so we can pull up this clip, because that's why you need to see this clip. Because the clip goes to show you famed psychologist Jennifer Eberhardt, black woman, wrote this book, Biased. And she talks about that so much of what we think about has been embedded in us that we're not even conscious of how we think and why we think the way that we think. And it impacts all aspects of our lives. So think about that. So if this quote unquote majorative group created this mindset in us based on who they see us as and who they want us to believe, and then we then indoctrinated that, and that's what we were taught growing up, that we're not even conscious of how we hold prejudices against each other. And we do it today. Light skin, dark skin, short hair, long hair, tall, short, skinny, voluptuous, educated, quote unquote, uneducated. What you drive versus where you live versus, come on. And we aren't even conscious of it. I mean, think about it. When I was growing up, the first little boy I liked, his name was Eric, and he lived around the block from us, and he was as dark as midnight. And I just thought he was the best thing in the world. And why you like that little black boy? He's black. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Are you supposed to like the light-skinned boy? Says who? Isn't that no difference than men who, my brother, same complexion. He had a preference for women of darker skin, darker hue. He would get teased about that. Why you like the dark girl? And think about it. Now, what is the image? That when you're doing something, especially again, you perpetuate that into media and the videos, everybody light skin, long hair. She doesn't even have to be cute. She doesn't have to have appealing facial features. But as long as she's light skinned, and heaven forbid if her eyes are a different color, oh my gosh, then she's exotic. So you got light skin, different color, or heaven forbid if she's biracial or something like that. Oh, you done hit the jackpot now, doc. And long hair, and that is your trophy piece. That's your arm candy. Are you even conscious about what you even think of as beautiful? You got to think about that. It has an impact in all areas and aspects of our lives. And then if we're not aware and conscious of it, it has an immediate impact on how we raise our children. It's no different. There's an amazing clip. I'm on Sean this morning. In a minute, I'm going to ask him, he's going to get on the mic. Sean shared this clip. And it's this phenomenal little boy. And I don't know where he gets these clips from, but Sean had this clip. And it's an amazing little boy. And he's having a conversation with his mother. And they're at dinner. And I swear, if he's not, and Sean, I sent you this video. I'm going to see if we can do something with it. He's having a dinner. It looks like there's some place where it's like crabs and something like that. He has a plate, and clearly he's an old soul. He has to be. And so the mother's, I don't know how they got on the relationship of a little girl, and her name is Bianca. And the mother tells him, well, you don't have to look at her that. You don't have to think about her that way. And he was like, well, she's not the first. And she said, well, what? You're only 5 years old. And he was like, but that's my girl. We called her bro at first. He's like, that's my girl, bro. That's my girl. And he said, you don't understand, mama. That's on life. And she's telling him, no, you're 5 years old. You're too young to have to, worry about this little girl and the commitment to her. You wrong, mama. That's my girl. That's on life. That's on life. And he stood up to make his position. He said, that's on life, mama. And then he sat back down. She was like, look, in essence, I don't even want to hear this because whatever. He was like, you're tripping. And I had an appreciation. I don't know where that little boy got it from, but he had a consciousness at 5 years old to say, that little girl, I'm looking out for her. That little girl, if that's the relationship that I'm in and that's my girl, my responsibility is to look out for her and make sure she's okay. I appreciate that. Versus a conversation, oh yeah, did you tell little boys, oh that's so cute, he got 4 and 5 little girlfriends, oh that's nice, that's good, he's a little player. And we perpetuate that shenanigans. And then when he's dealing in spaces that aren't as responsible, and then he has 4 and 5 babies by each one of those little girls, then what? And then you tell the little girls that, oh, well, they're supposed to be this virtuous woman who can find, oh, here we go. I know I'm going someplace y'all really don't want me to go. Who can find a virtuous woman? And she's supposed to be so pure and she's supposed to be so innocent. And that's the kind of girl that you marry. And so then you have one set of girls who are just out there doing everything. And those are the ones that are getting attention, and those are the ones that are living their best life and all this other kind of stuff. Then you got the quote-unquote good girls who are sitting at home. They can't get a date, can't get a conversation because she's a good girl, and thinking that at some point the man is supposed to appreciate you. Well, after he done run through the group and been worn down and used up, now he's supposed to be your prize? How does that work? There's a bias in that. Do you think about that? Do you think about what you teach your sons versus what you teach and expect from your daughters? It's no different than how we're raising young men right now. People aren't pushing young men to go on into skilled trade or to higher education. Thank God for the young men that do. But if the majority of them aren't, and then the young girls are on the fast track to education and to becoming successful individuals through education, whatever their career is going to be, who do they have to choose from? And then, so what you've done is create this internal issue with defining themselves, the definition. So men, I'm the man. And then because you have this educational acumen, then there's a disconnect, because then it's internally, he's questioning if he's good enough for her, but then I want to be the man. So then I'm going to overexert what my position is. And then she has to acquiesce. You all have heard it in church. I've heard it. The pastor is giving sermons and he's quoted and called out some people in the church to talk about, well, oh, so-and-so, she's a professional woman and her husband is a factory worker. But when she gets home, she gets in line and she allows him to lead. And she doesn't talk about her successes and all the stuff that she does because that makes her a good woman. Says who? Says your ego? Do you realize where these things come from? And so then she has to cow down her gifts. She has to control her gifts to appease an ego to keep peace. Where did that come from? Those are things that I want us to think about. So it's good enough that she's smart when you need her, but then she's too smart and it's too much for you. And maybe I'm just talking to myself, and maybe I'm just telling my own story, because that's probably what my experiences have been. So I'm smart enough when you need me to do stuff and to help you and to have all the answers and all that stuff. I'm great. And to help you fulfill your dreams and get you where you're going, and all that's wonderful. But then I'm too smart when I just don't listen to whatever you say just because you have you're a man and you have testosterone. And so then something's wrong with me, and I'm too assertive. Well, you can't have them both. So if you want me to just sit down and not know, then there's a price to pay for me sitting down not knowing. But I was talking to a young man yesterday, and I don't know if he calls himself trying to date me or whatever it is. And we were having a conversation. He was like, well, I mean, you're just so busy. Like, I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Am I just supposed to sit at home? Like, I'm supposed to be sitting here waiting for you? Like, what? And then it's always about what they want, what I want to see you, what I want to be a part of your life. Did I ask you? Did I ask you to be a part of my life? Did I ask you, did I say, oh, I want to see you? So do you realize what's wrong even in that? That it's always about what you want. You haven't presented anything that's going to make it beneficial for me to say that this is something that I want to engage in. Because you clearly understand and you see what you believe that I'm working with to bring to the table, whatever that is. Do you get that? And so maybe I need to start having a bias. I think I have, actually. I've finally gotten to the point where now I'm biased. I'm like, no. If you have not worked to get to where you need to be, because that's where you desire to be, and your goals and aspirations and what it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you haven't put your foot forward to do those things for you, don't do it. Don't have a conversation with me. Don't do it. Because I'm not making anyone else. That's a whole made in America. Not doing it. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm out of that business. How's that? Not doing it anymore. So if you're somewhere and I can jump in and help you as you are actively dealing and growing your business and businesses and all of that stuff, that's great. Your aspirations, your careers, that's great. But someone who is only, oh, I have a dream. Well, you don't even have a dream. Folks just make a dream for you and then put you in play, and then you forgot how you got there, and then you want to argue. That's what I had to tell one guy. I was like, do you realize I'm on your side? You fight so hard to try to prove me wrong, but I'm really on your side. So something's going on with you if you feel that you have to fight me. And in our communities, why do we do that? Who told us to play into that whole notion a woman is supposed to be seen and not heard? She's supposed to be sitting there waiting for you, the beck and call. Well, if you know the bias in America that aren't positioned to allow you to be successful as a black man, specifically in their world, the way that you would want to, there's a glass ceiling. You're only going to go so high in corporate America for the majority. Majority of us, you're going to need help and additional support to start and establish businesses. Not a problem. But if indeed you understand that, and then it's a partnership, but maybe that's where the problem comes again, is because we don't really understand what relationships are. Because maybe we haven't had those examples of what it looks like. And majority of us, instead of saying that this is what I didn't have, I'm going to work to create what I didn't have, we go back and do exactly and perpetuate all of those cancerous activities for what you didn't have until when you get to be an adult and you do the same thing. Or you're 10 times worse than that. So I'm asking us today, if we understand all of those things, A, how does society as a whole perpetuate that on us? And then I think, which is most detrimental, how we perpetuate those things and those inclinations against each other. And so that's where we're going today. So if we can, when we get there, we'll do that. We'll talk about that clip. And actually, it's a daily show. And the title is Tackling Perception's Effect on Behavior. So all of it is about our behavior. You look at how Trump felt against the squad. If you look at how now the government is looking at El Chapo. If you look at, the truth is, how the government is not looking at the Slayer family, the creators of Oxycontin. The truth is maybe how we're not even looking at how people of color really can thrive on the cannabis, and in the cannabis space. How we look at how we police each other, how we look at how we educate each other or don't. How we look at how we perpetuate the racism in America. That's where we are right now, biased. I don't even know if you've thought about it that way. I want you to. I want you to assess the spaces that you're in, even the biases of who we are to make it better for us in our communities. And I'm going to say it. You all know this week coming up, the NAACP is having their big shindig convention here. A week long of all those things that they're going to do in the folly and have people come in all across the country and have these panels and do these things and all of this stuff. And I'm not mad. I mean, I know that they have a model and a mantra and a mission, and perhaps they feel that they're doing it to the best of their ability. But I don't understand how that's really empowering our individual communities. Yeah, I said it. Those of you who are lifelong NAACP members, I need you all to tell me how the work from that group is benefiting the communities overall. I want to know why the NAACP wasn't one of the first to jump on social equity as it pertains to cannabis, to expunge the records of so many black and brown people across this nation who have been plagued by the stigma of having a felony attached to their name. You all saw the clip that you can't get student loans. In a lot of places, you still can't vote. You are hindered from getting adequate employment. So in this whole thing of making it better for each other, we work to emulate what the majority does when it's time for conference time and to have these conversations. But when does a conversation ever turn into action? And I'm not saying if they do have work programs and those things. I mean, the Detroit chapter is supposed to be the biggest chapter in the country, right? I'm a native Detroiter. So if I don't know what you're doing, I'm not saying that you're not doing it, but I just want to understand that's just an example. So when we have the platform to do more for each other, why don't we do that? Or do we feel that it's just enough that we can do for the people who pay the membership and then they show up? Is that no different like the church on Sunday? So there's a bias. I'm only going to give you the word if you come into the doors and you're going to tithe and offer. Then that is enough for me to give you the words that I have that are going to motivate you and emotionalize you to deal with whatever's happening in your life. Now, I don't know if that best adequately equips you when you get out of the doors of the church or the mosque or whatever it looks like, however you worship. But for that brief moment, you are in a space when then maybe I pray that you are in a space that you lend your spirit into a spatial experience in which you feel presence and you feel a connection and you're educated on the word, and whether it's the Bible or the Quran or whatever tool that you are using to understand the word based on what you believe, and you have the connection to a higher power. And then when you get out of that door, you're ready to tackle the world. Or perhaps just when you get out of the door, then you say, oh, service was great. And you were emotionalized and you say you felt the spirit and all those things, which you could do in those doors. But then when you walk out into the world, You're back to where you were before, trying to figure out how to pay your bills, trying to figure out how to put your kids through school, trying to figure out how to have affordable housing, trying to figure out how to have clean water, I'm trying to figure out, versus it being a resource and a tool. Because the truth of the matter is, a community is best when resources are there. Stronger policing doesn't make better communities. Better resources, more resources, and empowered citizens make better communities, which then hinder crime and violence. Do you think that people actually just want to go out there and risk their lives and die? Like, you think that's just a conscious effort? No. It's the basic necessities that people are missing. Now, of course, folks might want more things. Like, oh, yeah, I might want more designer, da-da-da. Okay, you take the risk of that. But I believe that most people who put themselves in harmful ways, specifically for things that are quote-unquote against the law, it's because of basic necessities. Food, shelter, clothing. The minimum wage, what does that do? If you have a history and actually a felony, absolutely, or conviction, you already know that the barriers of entry to what that looks like. Come on, you all. Those are the bias I want us to think about. The clip is ready. We're going to go to it. This is The Daily Show. I love Trevor Noah. I really like him. And Jennifer Eberhardt. We're talking about her book, Biased. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I have seen some of your interviews. I have read the book, and this is one of the most fascinating conversations that is being had in a completely new way. Let's talk about bias. What's interesting is many people think of bias as a way to say somebody's racist.
Right.
But off the bat, we've got to clear that off the table. Someone being biased is not someone necessarily being racist.
That's right. And I mean, all of us have a vulnerability to bias. And the book really looks at the science behind it.
Right.
And I think implicit bias can be defined as the beliefs and the feelings that we have about social groups that can affect our, our decision making and our behavior, even when we're unaware of it.
It's interesting because, most of us hear the term bias or implicit bias oftentimes when talking about police.
Right.
We'll hear that police have implicit biases. They will stop African-American people or minorities at a higher rate than the general population.
Right.
And that plays into the why. But how does bias affect somebody's ability to do their job as a police officer?
Well, it could affect, so in this country, there's an association between blackness and crime.
Right.
And that association could influence, the decisions that officers make and the actions they take, again, even without, knowing that it's affecting them.
You actually worked with Kamala Harris in implementing bias training.
Yes.
With police forces. How do you begin that? What do you say to somebody? You'd be like, now, you see the black person? No. Whatever you're thinking, no. How do you teach someone to not be biased?
Sorry. So the idea is to. I'm sorry.
No, please.
So what you do is, you go in and you teach them what bias is, what implicit bias is, but you also teach them the conditions under which it's likely to be triggered. And so you want them to be mindful of those conditions in order to try to protect themselves from having that bias affect what they do.
Right. That was another amazing thing that I learned from the book, and that is bias may not be on the surface. It may be triggered by an event, by stress, by panic. So what you're saying is there may be an officer who's fine all the time. He doesn't see black people as a threat, but then when a situation becomes stressful, all of a sudden his bias kicks in.
It could.
It's like an allergy.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but...
Well, you're a genius. I'm a comedian, so I mean...
So some situations where you're stressed, where you're threatened, where you have to think quickly, make decisions really fast. So all of those situations could trigger bias. It could make it more likely that you're going to act on that bias in some way.
Right.
And so you know, we as individuals, we could try to protect ourselves from bias by slowing it down, you know, right, by relaxing, by, sort of, combating the conditions that we know are going to produce it. And you could do that also at the organizational level. So a police department could develop strategies and policies that don't put their officers in situations where they have to think fast and, where they're under threat and so forth.
Right,
and so
try and find ways to slow it down so that you are less, less at risk of your bias kicking in.
Right.
If we talk about bias as a police issue, it seems easy for everybody to understand.
Okay.
But one of the most powerful stories you write about is the story of bias in your family as it affected your son.
Yes.
And you tell the story of your 5-year-old son.
Yes.
And you're in a plane together, and he looks over and he sees a black man with dreadlocks, and he says, "That man looks like Daddy."
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you go, "Oh, yeah, well, he doesn't look like Daddy, but why do you think that?" And he's like, "I don't know, he just reminds me of Daddy." And then your kid says, "I hope he doesn't rob the plane."
Yep, that's right.
And you ask him, which is really fascinating, you say to him, "Well, why would you say that? Would Daddy rob the plane?" And he's like, "No, I don't even know why I thought that. I just that moment, I mean, as a mother and as somebody who studies this, what must have been fascinating for you. What do you think that displayed, I mean, of a 5-year-old child who is black?
Right, right. I mean, it really underscores how sort of, all of us are living in this world where we're absorbing, what's out there. We're absorbing what we see, and we're absorbing these associations that are getting made. And so my child, he picked that up, right, from living in the world, from being exposed to everything out there. It affects what's in here, and it affects, how you then come to associate, a particular group with a particular behavior or trait, but then you don't know exactly when you learn that. So you don't have to, I think people think that, oh, well, children learn to be racist, say, because they have racist parents who will tell them, that, these people are like this and stay away from them. But you can live in the world and just absorb that by just watching how people behave and just, you don't have to be explicitly told about a group. You can learn that for yourself. And that's what a child's job is to pick up what goes with what, what correlates with what.
Right, pick up what is not said effectively.
Yeah.
Do you think that it helps to have narratives and images and ideas that counteract that? I remember a really beautiful conversation that I watched. It was Muslim actors who were speaking about how the portrayal of Muslims in Hollywood has affected how many people in America and around the world see a brown person who is Muslim. They go, this person is bound to be a terrorist because that's all they see. And they said, we need more roles where Muslim people are just Dan in accounting. So you go like, this person could be anything.
Yes.
But does it help to see images that counter it, or is it more powerful than that?
Well, I mean, I think it does help to see those images, but that's not, the cure, right? So there are studies that have been done by researchers showing that even when, say, African Americans are placed in positive roles and in powerful roles on television, the actors surrounding them can give them sort of negative treatment or negative nonverbals that then people pick up just watching the show. And so you can become, more biased by watching someone treat a black person in a negative way.
So if Michael Costa gives me the stank eye, then people out there could become biased. I'm watching you, Michael. I'm watching you.
Where is he?
Let's talk about companies as well. You do work with corporations as well to try and help them combat bias. Airbnb is one of those. And we know that there were many stories where Airbnb was struggling with people who didn't want to have black people stay in their houses, and how they rented affected. How do you begin implementing this on a corporate level and then expanding it into the public?
Yeah, so I work with them just informally. They sought me out as a social scientist who does work in this area, and they were having issues with racial profiling basically on the platform, and so they tried to combat it in multiple ways, and so one was by hiring someone to come in and to to kind of talk to people about what their experiences were by looking at the law to see, what could be done there. They settled on actually having people sign a community pact saying that, basically that they wouldn't be biased, and that they understood what the norms of the platform were to not disqualify someone from staying in your home because of your race, so forth. So they did all that, and then they also put together a team of people. It's an anti-discrimination team that meets on an ongoing basis, and sometimes I meet with them as well to try to think about ways that will shut it down or at least combat it in some way. Yeah.
Before I let you go, one issue that has been discussed quite intensely has been the issue around artificial intelligence and bias.
Yeah.
We've seen so many stories of like artificial intelligence used in court cases or artificial intelligence used to determine people's threat levels or so on and so forth. But what's been interesting is the realization that computers and AI aren't biased. They are just exposing the bias in the people who program the computers.
Right.
Do you think that that's something that we can fix, and if so, how?
We need to deal with bias, right? So when we don't deal with it, it can just migrate to some other place.
Right.
And so I think we sort of think about AI as doing all these good things and sort of doing a service to us, but in that way they don't always. So I think I'm actually using AI with the policing work now to look at body-worn camera footage, and there it's really helpful because you can look not just at an isolated case where there's a sort of high-profile case and try to adjudicate right and wrong. You could actually look across thousands of traffic stops is what we're doing, and look at how those interactions are unfolding and to try to pick up patterns in those interactions, and to see the extent to which drivers who are black versus white are treated differently and so forth. So I feel like there's a huge promise there to the AI, using AI to actually analyze this footage can give us a window into what is really happening on the ground, the blow by blow, as it's unfolding in real time.
Before I let you go, I really had a fun time reading about one particular incident, or a series rather. It's interesting, so many people will say, oh, bias is not real, or we don't see it, companies, businesses, etc. But there were a group of criminals in Oakland who are very aware of bias. And what they did was really interesting. Could you tell the audience what exactly these criminals did and how they used bias in their favor?
So this was when I got to Oakland, California, and I was starting work with the police department there, and the crime rate was going down, but there were a series of strong-arm robberies that always seemed to happen in Chinatown in Oakland, and they would involve middle-aged Chinese women, so they were snatching their purses from their arms, so this is it's really stymied. The police officers, they couldn't figure out how to, catch the robbers, because when they would round people up and say, "Is this the person?" the middle-aged Chinese women couldn't tell you.
Right.
And when they asked the robbers, well, why are you going there? Why are you going to Chinatown? And they said, because they can't tell the brothers apart.
That is one of the most horrible, fantastic stories ever. And the book is full of them. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Wonderful having you. Bias is available now. Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt, everybody.
We are Mouse, and we've designed a phone case that can do this.
This is quite scary, and it is my iPhone 7. Ready? Here goes.
And they look like this.
environment is so friendly. Always feel like home.
We have so much support from the staff. You meet people who are like you.
I always had a passion to help others, so this is the perfect place for me.
You're not afraid to reach out. Flora Kiwang, Cameroon.
Maklit Shonga, Ethiopia.
Javed Khan, Bangladesh.
Dennis Carrick, Bosnia and Herzegovina.
They give you what you need for the future.
Kareem Bean Pie is the grand champion of all bean pies. The rich flavor and smooth texture takes this pie to a whole new level of delicious. One bite and you'll understand why people all over the country call daily to order Kareem Bean Pie. Call 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie.
This bean pie is delicious.
Alexa, open TV 33 Live. Alexa, open FM Detroit. Alexa, open FM Virgin Islands. Now you can listen to WHPR, TV 33, and WVIE on Amazon Echo. Don't miss a minute of your favorite shows. And find out how you can have your own show heard worldwide on Amazon Echo. For more information, go to FirestickTVNetwork.com or call us at 313-868-6612. The Watkins Broadcasting Company.
Women of Courage Show is conducting 2 workshops Saturdays, September 14th and October 5th at the Southfield Pavilion. The regular tickets for each event is $20. Contact Renee 707-881-7363 for tickets and vendor opportunities. This is going to be a spectacular event. There is only one person in this state that can give a workshop like this. Contact Renee at 707-881-7363. Come and enjoy.
Have you been in an accident? Have you been injured? Auto, motorcycle, bicycle, pedestrian, truck, bus accident, slip and fall, dog bite, wrongful death, or police brutality? Then you need professional help from Tri-County Lawyers. No fee unless we win. Tri-County Lawyers. Call 888-292-6908. That's 888-292-6908. Tri-County Lawyers. Call 888-292-6908.
You can have your own party on TV. Party with RJ Watkins and the TV 33 family when you hold your own Facebook watch party. Connect all your friends with our friends, and we can have a watch party together. Watch your favorite TV shows when you want, how you want, with your favorite people. Here's how it works. Log on to Facebook from your computer or tablet and go to the RJ Watkins fan page at facebook.com/TV33WHPR. The one with the blue WHPR logo on the left. Like us. Click the word videos with the red tag that says live next to it. Then click the share button at the bottom of the video player and select start a watch party. Invite whoever you want. Your party will be recorded and archived for playback anytime you want. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. At the end of the month, the viewer that has the most people at their watch party will be invited on the TV show live. Come on, let's have a party.
So appreciative of the clip that you just saw with The Daily Show with Trevor Noah and Jennifer Eberhardt and her book Bias. Had you thought about it? Sean and I were having just the best conversation during the break, and I mean, it is amazing when you really sit back. So much of who we are, I'd venture to say for the majority of us, everything that we are is what has been told to us. We were literally made in America. And I was laughing, and you all remember the clip, and I can't show it. I would really love to show it, but it has too many explicit words in it. But you all remember Cat Williams. He talks about when you take the tiger, because literally all of us, it's like we're a bunch of animals, quote unquote, from the jungle in a zoo. So they've created this fake habitat for us. And then for people of color, put you in spaces, defined you, told others who you are, indoctrinated you into believing who you are, perhaps who you aren't, and then want you to excel in what they've given you. So when they tell you to jump through the hoop, that's when you jump through the hoop. When they tell you it's time to eat, this is when you eat. When they tell you what you're supposed to eat, that's what it is. Because the truth of the matter is, as we were discussing, our diet, who we are in America, isn't even what our diet's supposed to be. We're not carnivores. Do you wonder why we have so many diabetes and all these other issues? Because the truth of the matter is, from where we've come, and whether you all can, I don't even care. Don't come talking to me about, well, because I'm American. Guess what? The nature and the genetics of your makeup came from a space where we were fruits and vegetables and grain, and all this meat and all this consumption wasn't a part of our diet. But of course, when you're taken from what you know to be home, you're in a fake habitat. So we don't even know our authentic selves. Maybe that's where I'm going with this. We don't even know our authentic selves. Because everything that we were given and told that is good for us and how we should act and who we should be is based off of the ideology of someone who wants to control us. And even to this day, we're not even conscious. Did you hear Mrs. Everhart talk about her son? The subliminal messaging is so real. What did her son say when they were on the plane? Oh, that guy looks like daddy. So he was conscious enough to understand that a man of color and how whatever there was. And she's like, well, you think so, really? He's like, he just reminds me of him. And then what was the next thing he said? Well, I hope he doesn't rob us. So where did he get that from? Outside of an imagery and a conversation and subliminal messaging that has you to believe that all black men are going to rob, steal, murder, rape, drug dealers, whatever the case may be. And even to the point about all individuals who are Muslim or from Al-Qaeda, whatever the case may be, then as soon as you see them, you're now indoctrinated into thinking, is he a terrorist? When you hear the language, oh my goodness. What's going to happen? Is he going to try to bomb us? What's going to happen? Don't say that you don't think it, because you do. And so much so now that people of color are denying access from other people of color into the United States. What does that sound like? What if our original people, because clearly the original people were trying to be, which is who we are, don't think that you don't have some kind of connection to the indigenous people of this land. Not Indians. They created that. The original people of this land, they didn't want them coming over. I mean, you're a foreigner. I don't know anything about you. Here you coming over here. But, instead of just killing you off the bat, I'm trying to be hospitable. I'm just trying to figure out what this looks like. And you see how it worked out for us. But what did they do? Once they came in, gained our trust, then they took us off of our land, I showed you all, remember we had the clip probably a year ago, took us off of our land, put us in schools, took the children, put them in the schools, cut their hair, changed their diets, took away their language, any connection to their culture, and indoctrinated them into what they believed it should be for them. What language you should speak, how you should look, what you should eat, how you should act. That's where we are right now. Majority of us have all these life stresses because we're so busy trying to define ourselves based off of who they say we should be and what they say is right or wrong. And I'm going to throw the Bible in there. And so much so that the same book that they use to oppress us, we use that to oppress each other. You think about it that way? I mean, you all remember, you saw the movie with Nat Turner? And he had them taking them on the tour and said, what did the guy tell him? You tell him this scripture, obey your masters and da-da-da-da. So they absolutely knew all the text to use to oppress us, but they weren't even going by the word. I'm preaching right now. So the part about love each other, treat each other fair, treat each other equal, that didn't apply to us. I just want you to be the slave, and you're going to use this part of the Bible because I'm going to press that, use that. And to this day, we do the same thing. Come on. And you don't not to, and I'm gonna go somewhere you really don't want to go right now. Just even with under the Old and the New Testament, everyone talks about this whole tithe and offering thing. That was based on those who lived in the space of worship, and then you paid the monies to help keep it together. That's not what you got to do right now. But every Sunday, jokers get up, tithes and offering. And then if the offering isn't what they want, they come back and give you 2 or 3 more offerings that you got to take because there's a certain amount of money that you have to bring in. For what? Where does that money go? I'm asking. But we got that ideology from someplace else. And then, so historically, the best thing for us to leverage and the best thing that gave us value in communities and the best thing that we thought was going to give us respect is to be a man of the cloth and a man of God. Because that's what we respect in our communities. Based on what? Based on what they told us? And then we got the nerve to sit up here and look down on people who perhaps do things that aren't in the ordinary, quote unquote, defined by what they say and how you should act. If you don't go to a certain school, if you didn't pursue higher education, if you don't look a certain way, if you don't go shop at certain spaces, we have the nerve to look down at each other. Where'd they even come from? That their stuff is always better. Their ice is always colder. Their juice is always sweeter. We won't sit and support ours who have clothing lines and food companies and the like, real estate. But as long as they own it, we think it's better. Where did that come from? That's why I tell everyone. And so we talk about that. People ask me, I love it if I'm in a space. I'm like, don't. And it goes back to folks in high school. And they're like, oh, why don't you go back to the reunions and this and the other, da, da, da. I said, you know why? Because I don't want to be in a fake habitat. Because if you can't just connect with me with how's your life? Like, are you healthy? Are you whole? Are your children good? Is there something I can help you with? If that's not the conversation, I don't want to be in the conversation of, well, what have you accomplished since high school? And what, because we always going to have a problem. If you want to go there, we're never going to connect. Because I've been blessed to have experiences that exceed what a lot of other people have had. And so that's going to be a problem right there. And where did that even come from? That's who we are and how we deal with each other on a day-to-day basis anyway. If someone isn't doing it the way we think that they should do it, then we don't support them. Brothers and sisters who are being incarcerated based on laws that were created to oppress them outside of what they do. There was a guy, Robert, I got to get his last name right. He was the leader of the Black Tuna Gang. Back in the 70s, they're the ones that were bringing in Colombia cannabis. No prior arrest, no record. He got 64 years in prison, served 30 of them. And now he's out teaching folks about cannabis, but now this is $1 billion industry. Isn't that always the case? People talk about, individuals that are sitting here in a space and you might be distributing illicit drugs or whatever the case may be, but you didn't fly them in here. I showed you JP Morgan owns the ship that brought in the drugs that just got seized, the cocaine. So you're a casualty in the food chain, but the perception and ideology is that is who you are. But all the movies that they show you growing up are the lives of the Godfather. And what are all the mob movies? Scarface, The Godfather. And so that's everything, a sense of family, taking care of yourself, coming up from nothing. If that is the imagery that you are given of how you're supposed to act and what models you're supposed to emulate, what do you think you're going to do? But it's okay for them. Because the mafia still runs now. You don't hear about anything about them in the racketeering, and for the majority of it's understood. They do what they do. That is a lifestyle. Everybody knows, and they're left alone. But those of us, oh no. Or they just figure maybe you'll just kill yourselves off because you don't have a value for you because I've taught you not to have a value for you. Isn't that the irony in that when we are succumb to a travesty with policing in our communities, we'll be the first to want to go in uproar and we want to protest and we want to put balloons, and as we should, because that's a life that's lost and that should not be the case. But then we can shoot and kill each other every day, literally or figuratively, and no one has a problem with it. Our mouths kill people. What we say ill on people, lack of support on people. great, amazing morning to Kind Hearts Media and Dominique and Jessica and Andre. We were on a great conference call yesterday. And I can tell I'm very in tune with energy and the like. And so they shared some things with me. And I told them my goal is to make sure you are good and whole. And whatever I can contribute to your life, then make sure that you have balance. Because everyone who is tuned in right now, I just want you to know that I think you're amazing. For the simple fact that you care enough to be a part of this conversation today, for the simple fact that if this is something that I can give you that allows you to think a little bit differently about things and do something that will help make it better for you and those around you and those that you love, because that is the true purpose of why I'm here. Because I was told all that growing up, you go to a great school, you get the education, it's about the money, you amass this, and that's what I did. Committed to family up till 40 years old, and then you realize, well, what else is there? It's about life. It's about connection. It's about family. It's about children. Yeah, the money and all that stuff, that's fine. But what's the impact? And so I want something different for us. That's a space. I want us to really know what we're in because we're in it. It's not about them. You expect them and this government and this law to be oppressive to you because they never saw you and valued you as a human being. Those laws are still on the books. And the truth of the matter is that's how we treat each other right now. We don't value each other as human beings. We don't meet each other where we are. We're so busy trying to one up each other and prove you that you're wrong instead of working with you on what's right. There are brilliant people in this campaign in Baltimore. And I told them, I was like, look, I told my candidate, I was like, look, I know it's going to be pushback because I'm an outsider. It never fails. They look at you as an outsider. How can you bring someone in who's not from here, didn't grow up with us, doesn't know this struggle? Well, a lot of dynamics of Baltimore are just like Detroit. Be very clear about it. But I told them my job is to help you do what you do best, to extract what you know of this community that you love so much and so have such a commitment to shape those ideologies into programs and into formats and into platforms that then disseminate a word that's going to give a resource and a viable option to change the lives of those individuals that are hindered and are suffering from PTSD, and which is the majority of the city, not the well-to-dos. Not because I think that I know so much, I just know what I know. And so at the end of the day, I get more pushback from wording and what they think it should be versus being open to what I'm suggesting. We do that to each other. That's what it's about. We spend more time trying to fight and prove each other wrong based on what we don't know. And it got so bad, and it was to a point that I just said, well, guess what? I was just asked to come here. That's all I'm saying. I was asked. Now, if you all have never run a conversation, you've never run a campaign, and you've definitely never won one. So if you've never run, R-U-N, and you've never won, W-O-N, I'm not saying you don't have an opinion, but you probably need to back up off me. Because there's a theory to this thing. There's a science to this thing. But that's who we are. We'll fight more. Now, let somebody else come up in there that doesn't look like us. You won't question anything that they say. Because you were taught that way. That's no different than El Chapo. So everyone thinks that El Chapo is the bad guy. You know how El Chapo was raised? So like so many of us coming from urban and inner cities and even rural America. I'm not leaving you all out because you're in the same boat. It's about socioeconomic class. It's not about skin color. They created that ideology so that we would be different and believe that one is better than the other, that one is taking something away. That's why you have a problem with the immigrants that are coming in now, because the perception is if they come in, then they're going to take what you have. But the truth is, for people of color, that this America wasn't built to give you anything. You were supposed to continuously be the slave. Right now, today, you're still supposed to be the slave, still. Now, you might be dressed up in clothing and you might have the freedoms to go where you want and spend money and travel, but the ideology is that you're still the slave. And so then we sit and say, well, oh, they shouldn't come in because now we're better than them. And they're fleeing oppression and they want a better life, but we're better than them. But the truth of the matter is we don't even know how to make this life better for us. How's that? So what, you think they're going to come in and maximize the American dream? But it's your fault that you haven't maximized the American dream. We give those examples. How many of those families have come over and there might be 2 or 3 households in a family, and 2 or 3 families in a household. It might be a 3-bedroom house and whatever, but they're going to figure out and they're going to make it work. And we're going to get together and we're going to raise the children and we're going to sacrifice and we're going to get money and we're going to take that money and send some home and we're going to make this work for us. We won't live in the same house with another family member. We won't live next door to some we won't live on the same block because everybody wants their own now. I can't be the boss of this. Where'd that come from? Who taught us that? That's what you think about. So now we're sitting here talking about El Chapo is so bad. Man, bye. I'm going to have a picture today on social media. And great morning, Rock. Thank you so much. He has done some digital work for me. That's why if you all follow me on social media, you saw me with my squad. He imposed my face in with the squad yesterday, so it looked like I was at the press release. And then he imposed me in an image of them being interviewed by Gail, like I was sitting there with them too. So I can't wait to see what we're going to come up with today with El Chapo, because I stand with El Chapo. El Chapo was by any means necessary, and he was doing what he needed to do to better his situation, which is how can then we hold him accountable for what he's done when all the atrocities that have been put on people across this world by what America's policies and governance have done in the efforts of taking their resources. That's what the Confession of an Economic Hitman is. You all remember that? So I'm going to identify your resources. I'm going to go over there and put my infrastructure over on you. I'm going to bring in American businesses and put you into 20 and 30 and 40 and 50-year stranglehold deals to pull your resources out and say that I'm going to give you something. I'm going to elevate you, but in essence, I'm controlling you. That's what we do across this world. But that's in the efforts of progress, right? And having allies and bringing everyone up to power, because to whom much is given, what is required. That's a great conversation, but it's all about control. And we want what you have, and we're going to figure out a way to get it. And so ultimately, they couldn't control El Chapo, or he got too big, and so they figured, I'm going to get you because I really want your money. But we're not going after the Sacklers here who created Oxycontin. If Sean says we're ready and we got the clip, we're going to go to it. Sean, we ready? Okay, we got the clip. This is drug lord El Chapo sentenced to life plus 30 years. It's only about 5 minutes. It's the source is CBS News. Convicted drug king Joaquin El Chapo Guzman spoke in court about corruption and injustice as he was sentenced in federal court in New York. This was CBS News correspondent Jerika Duncan, and this is the latest. So let's take a look.
Duncan, she is standing by outside the courtroom. So, Jerika, tell us how it all played out.
I think everyone was sort of shocked. You could not hear anything. Everyone was silent when El Chapo decided to give those statements. Essentially, for 15 minutes, he began by thanking his wife, his 2 children, his attorneys, his paralegals. But then he went into saying that he had to bear torture for the last 30 months. He said that he was denied sanitary water, fresh water, sunlight, things that were making his head, his ears, his throat hurt. He said, I have not been able to see my wife, visit my wife, hug my children. He said this was the most inhumane conditions I've ever experienced. But then he sort of took a turn, as Ricky said, and scolded the judge and said that you did nothing to question the juror. You didn't want to bring the juror back because what you did allege, the actions of the jury were not important because this was a lot of evidence against me. This is in reference to the Vice report that said 5 jurors did not follow the instructions of the judge and were looking at media reports. That's not allowed when you are covering and on a jury for a trial. So El Chapo's arguing that he didn't get a fair trial. He said there was no justice here. And again, ending his comments, Ricky, you said that they denied me of a fair trial. The U.S. is no better than any other country that you don't respect. This is no surprise, though. We spoke to Jeffrey Lichtman. This is one of the attorneys for El Chapo, and he basically said that he believed that there were some issues with that jury and that as soon as this sentencing was over that they would file a motion to appeal because he believes that his client did not get a fair trial despite all of the evidence. We also know that the prosecution is planning to go after nearly $13 billion that they believe El Chapo made during this time that he was a drug lord. I want to go quickly to a bite from Jeffrey Lichtman from that interview yesterday. Does he even have close to $13 billion?
He doesn't have $13 billion in his wallet, I can assure you, inside the MCC. But the government's been looking for his assets for so long they haven't found a penny. This is a fiction. This is what they're obligated to do, is to fix a forfeiture number. There will be an order entered tomorrow with that number, and the chances of the government fulfilling that order is probably close to zero. I mean, they've had many years they haven't found a penny.
How much money is El Chapo worth?
You ask Forbes. I think they put him on the list, and he was number 701 at one point, but I don't know where they got their numbers from. The point is this: if he had so much money, where is the money?
So again, that was one of his attorneys who we spoke to yesterday. Our producer Cassandra just came downstairs, just wanting to confirm again, which again you guys probably already know, though, that he was sentenced to life plus 30 years. We're getting more information at this time. We're expecting that the prosecutors will also come out here and address the media, as well as El Chapo's defense team. I want to also now go to a bite with Lichtman when he discussed his issues with those 5 jurors from that Vice article and said that his client did not get a fair trial. Take a listen.
We brought him over here from Mexico for a reason. Okay, he was serving a sentence in Mexico. He probably never would have gotten out of jail. We brought him over here for a reason, which was to show the world that our judicial system was exceptional, that we're not like Mexico that was on the take, that supposedly he escaped from and all those things.
You said supposedly he escaped from?
Well, I mean, that was some of the evidence in the case. So I'm not going to pass judgment. Let the jury do that. I'm the defense lawyer. I'm not here to convict my client. The fact is this: we brought him here to show the world that we had a fair judicial system. And what ends up happening? The jury commits crimes while they're determining his fate.
Jerika, right there when he said, when you got him to repeat that El Chapo supposedly escaped from prison, I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, you know, he was forthcoming in terms of how he felt. He said, you know, listen, I understand there was a lot of evidence, but he's looking at this in terms of the technicality of potentially jurors that he believes did not follow the instructions of the judge. Lichtman ended his statements, because he spoke for about 5 minutes inside the courtroom today, by saying history will treat this verdict with skepticism. So even though this is the longest trial that Lichtman even told me he's tried, 3.5 months, he's willing to go through this process again because he believes that.
Excuse me, sir.
There you go. Now, you just tell me he was in prison over in his country doing his thing. But we had to bring him over because we had to jump in like double dutch. Like, they got the ropes jumping, and we got to move them out the way, and we have to jump in because we have to show them how our justice systems work. So if we're the last ones then to put the nail in the coffin, then that means we can get the bounty. So it's all about money, right? It's all about money. But it's interesting because now I'm going to juxtapose that to the Sackler family. Have you all heard about them? So the Sackler family is the maker of OxyContin. You all know what OxyContin is? That is this horrific drug that was approved, of course, by the FDA. It's supposed to help rid individuals of pain, but it's highly addictive and is taking America by storm. There was an article Associated Press presented amid waves of opioid deaths. A flood of pills, data shows, shipped billions of mostly generic meds across the United States. Washington, and I quote, "The maker of OxyContin has been cast as a chief villain in the nation's opioid crisis. But newly released government figures suggest Purdue Pharma had plenty of help in flooding the U.S. with billions of pills, even as overdose deaths were accelerated. Records kept by the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration show that 76 billion oxycodone and hydrocodone pills, the vast majority of them generics, not brand names, were shipped to U.S. pharmacies from 2006 to 2012. The annual numbers swelled by more than 50% over that period of time, even as the body counts climbed. The powerful painkillers flowed faster than even after Purdue Pharma was fined $635 million for falsely marketing OxyContin as less addictive than other opioids. Did you just hear what I read? They were fined $635 million. That was just a fine because you falsely marketed it in the midst of people consistently dying. People dying right now. People using and ODing right now off of Oxycontin. But you mean to tell me you're putting all these energies and wares and efforts into El Chapo, and we're flooding U.S. markets right now, business in U.S. right now, and we're not bringing the Sackler family up on trial? And if that's the case, then it calls the FDA because you approved the drug, and all the pharmacies that you, so Pure Pharma who produces it, Purdue Pharma that produces it, and then they distribute it and send it to the pharmacies, and then the doctors that prescribe it. All these people should be on trial if it's about the best quality of life. See the narrative? So what's the narrative? That it's drugs supposed to be bad? Well, or maybe certain drugs are bad depending on who produces them, who supplies them. You don't see that there's a bias in that? Let's take a look. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you don't know enough about the Sackler family and Oxycontin and the business of big business of pharmaceuticals in America. So this clip we're going to show from CNBC. It's how the Sacklers, the family behind Oxycontin, became nonprofit pariahs. Let's take a look.
A major benefactor to charity. But now, money from the Sackler family has become radioactive in the world of high-profile nonprofits and museums. Cultural institutions like the Met in Guggenheim in New York and the Tate in London have cut ties with the family. The reason? The same family that funded major museums and galleries for decades is at the center of the opioid crisis in the United States. Purdue Pharma created Oxycontin, an opioid-based painkiller that many believe helped spur the opioid epidemic, killing thousands across the U.S. In a statement to CNBC, a spokesman for the family called the allegations false and unfair and said the family understood the Met's decision. Here's how Sackler money became radioactive. Purdue Pharma was founded in New York City in 1892. 60 years later, the company was bought by Raymond and Mortimer Sackler. The private company moved its headquarters to Norwalk, Connecticut in 1973, and then Stamford, Connecticut in 2000. Purdue and its network of independent associated companies currently employ about 5,000 people around the world, according to the company's website. Today, it brings in billions of dollars in revenue from drug sales. Purdue sees itself as a pioneer in developing medications for reducing pain, a principal cause of human suffering, and its roster of drugs includes oxycodone, fentanyl, and codeine. One of the company's best-selling medications is Oxycontin, which hit the market in 1996. Purdue announced it would stop promoting the drug to doctors in early 2018, but previously the drug was aggressively marketed as a safe pain medication. Turns out that's not entirely true. And that's why the Sackler family stands accused of playing a central role in the opioid epidemic. More than 47,600 Americans died from opioid overdoses in 2017, according to federal data. That's more than 130 people a day. The largest portion of that number died due to prescription opioid abuse. If you've broken a bone or had surgery, your doctor may have prescribed opioids for pain. These drugs bind to opioid receptors in the body. They block feelings of pain and trigger the release of dopamine, and include prescription pills as well as fentanyl and heroin. Dopamine makes people feel good, but the high is short-lived. Since the brain craves more, it can start a vicious cycle. Simply put, the more opioids you take, the more the brain likes it. And when your body builds a tolerance, you need higher doses or something stronger to get the same sensation. Try to stop and the body rebels. Withdrawal symptoms include aching, fever, diarrhea, vomiting, sweating, and chills. From 1991 to 2011, opioid prescriptions nearly tripled, according to IMS Health, a company that provides data to the healthcare industry. The opioid death rate tripled over the same time. Since then, efforts to tamp down on the availability of prescription opioids has led to an increase in the supply of heroin. Mexican heroin production increased from 30 metric tons in 2011 to 111 in 2017. Nearly 80% of heroin users started with opioids. Opioid addiction can occur after only 5 days of use. In the 90s, there was a realization doctors needed to be more attentive to patients' pain. Pharmaceutical companies launched a massive campaign to promote opioids as a solution. At the same time, illegal drugs, including heroin and illicit fentanyl, were pouring into the country. When patients' opioid prescriptions ran out, they looked for something stronger or cheaper. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, deaths from heroin increased nearly eightfold from 1999 to 2017. Meanwhile, deaths from man-made opioids like fentanyl increased by 21 times. In 2007, McKesson Corp shipped 3 million prescription opioid pills to what was the Save Right Pharmacy in Kermit, West Virginia. The town has 400 residents. That story was from a congressional report delivered in late 2018. The incident helped push Congress to act. One of the results was the Opioid Crisis Response Act of 2018, sponsored by Senator Lamar Alexander, a Republican from Tennessee. The bill garnered bipartisan support, even though critics said it fell short in terms of funding. According to the AMA, the bill will help fight the problem in several ways. It expands programs to prevent substance abuse and overdoses, increases treatment programs, and pledges to stop the flow of illicit drugs into the country by mail. It also increases funding for research and requires reports from Health and Human Services on opioid prescription dosages. In October 2018, President Trump signed the bill into law. Recently, states have seen another unexpected factor that's been a major benefit for addicts seeking help. Medicaid expansion in states like West Virginia. It's made treatment available where it wasn't before. A recent study from policy and research journal Health Affairs showed the number who have been diagnosed as opioid abusers under the expansion has doubled. Meanwhile, Harvard and NYU researchers found in 2017 that without Obamacare, more than 200,000 opioid addicts would lose coverage. So, what happens next? In April 2019, 60 people in 5 states were indicted, including a number of doctors and pharmacists. They were charged with the illegal prescribing of more than 32 million pain pills. Those involved were based in West Virginia, Ohio, Tennessee, Alabama, and Kentucky. There was even a dentist charged with unnecessarily pulling people's teeth. He gave them opioids to deal with the pain. Meanwhile, Purdue continues to fight a growing number of lawsuits in American courts. In 2007, the company pleaded guilty to federal charges of misleading doctors, regulators, and patients about OxyContin's risks. Purdue paid more than $600 million in penalties. In early 2019, the company settled with Oklahoma for $270 million. The agreement was to settle allegations the company helped spur the opioid crisis. Purdue denied any wrongdoing and announced the settlement on its website in March. The release stated, Purdue Pharma announces landmark agreement with Oklahoma to advance the treatment of addiction. Purdue also announced in March the FDA was fast-tracking its own nalmefene hydrochloride injections. The injections are for the emergency treatment of opioid overdoses. The company will not profit from HCI, according to the release. Purdue also faces lawsuits in a number of other states, including Illinois. And lawsuits have been filed against the Sacklers themselves. Attorneys general in New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Utah have all filed suit against family members. In March, more than 500 cities, counties, and Native American tribes filed suit in the Southern District of New York. Still, Purdue continues to deny any role in the crisis. A company spokesperson told CNBC the charges are baseless and inconsistent with the factual record. But that hasn't stopped the lawsuits, and it may force the company to file for bankruptcy protection.
But the sad part about it is, did you get it? They didn't close them down. So they're going to file bankruptcy, right? So that means they're going to get coverage under the court. If you just look at and do the math, just the numbers that we saw in penalty, we're at $1 billion right there, right? But there's enough evidence. So whereas El Chapo in his 11 weeks, and now you get life, what more do you need to prove the case against the Sacklers, Purdue Pharmacy, McKesson, but it's okay. It's about who's getting the benefits from the business. It is all about the business of government, the business of corporation, the business of America. And so everyone knows, you saw that if you use OxyContin within 5 days, you're addicted. Within 5 days. And so with that being the case, and we know that, the data shows that, and folks are consistently still writing the prescriptions out. pharmacies are still consistently filling the prescriptions. Doctors are giving. You saw that the dentist was wrongly extracting people's teeth so that he could prescribe the drug. What is that? If that is not intentional harm and endangerment, I don't know what is. But as long as it's the money, who's controlling the money? America can control the money, then it's all right. Because that's what it is. Oh, well, you're only supposed to use it a little bit when you are coming out of a situation either. That's just like morphine, right? So, okay, yeah, you have this issue in the hospital and they're only going to give you the drip while you're in the hospital and then you're supposed to be okay. If you think something that is that strong and you actually think, and then they prescribe you pills to go home. How can you not get addicted to that? And they know it. Oh, but then Purdue Pharma comes back and says what? Well, we're going to create a drug that's going to wean you off of the addiction that we created. And then we'll get more money for that. But we're not going to reap the revenue from it. Well, where's the revenue going to go? Where is it going to go? You create a product so that you can create revenue. That it's the business of corporate. So I am going to feed you the problem, create the addiction, and then I'm going to give you, if you want it, because not everyone's going to want it because they're already hooked. But I'm going to say that I did it. And we know it. But they haven't gone to trial yet. El Chapo went 11 weeks. He's done, locked up, and is about to go away for life. What kind of bias is that? What kind of contradiction is that? I just want you to think about those things in our lives right now. What's that whole adage? They say, do as I say and not as I do. Have you noticed that? So it's okay that in America, you can do what you want to do, depending on who it is, say what you want to say, depending on who it is, not have any recourse against either one of those things, depending on who it is, because it's America. That's the privilege of America. And I'm just asking us today, as we go through these things in our lives, as we're having these experiences, as you're all about to engage in the rest of your day, as you interact with people, I just want you to think. Think about everything that's happening around you. Think about what you watch on those other news channels. Think about the same information that they're giving you, and it's perpetuated every hour upon every hour. And you know, they say that if you hear something so many times, that you'll start to believe it. And do you even question what you're told? Or maybe it just depends on who says it. So they say if MSNBC, that's a credible source of news. So when they say it or CNN says it, then you don't question it. Or if you read it in Bloomberg or Reuters or the Wall Street Journal, then you don't question it. But they tell you that it's bad news, it's gossip if it's in the New York Post, that New York Times is more credible. LA Times is more credible. Do you all get it? Again, that's the perception of how you're supposed to look at the information that you're given versus just saying, you know what, I'm going to read it for what it is. I'm going to understand the narrative and the perspective from the entity, the source in which it has come from, how it positions, and then what the impact is going to be on my life. Because at the end of all of this, we have to understand how it impacts us. And the truth of the matter is how we impact each other. Because it is the life and death of us, literally and figuratively. So that's where we are today. I hope that I've given you some things to think about. I mean, I'm appalled. Don't you feel like you're in the Matrix? I do. And I believe at times I've taken the red, and remember the whole piece in the Matrix. What did Lawrence Fishburne's character say? What was, I forgot his name, Neo or what? No, whatever, or the other guy's name. Either the red or the green pill, right? And so that's the whole comparative of ignorance is bliss. You remember when you were growing up and you would hear that all the time? Well, people, oh, ignorance is bliss. You're like, well, how is ignorance bliss? Now you see. Because if you're not awakened, if you're not enlightened, then you don't have anything to compare it to. So you don't question things because everything that is given to you, everything that is told to you, you believe it to be fact. And there's no part about your being that has you to question what you're given to, and then the person and the entity that gives it to you. Do you think that all the books that were created that are given in schools, and specifically, there's certain books that are banned off of lists now? Even in prisons, there are certain books that the prisoners can't read. Because I don't want to give you any ideas that you have rights that might incite you to think and question and do some things differently. Because in this space, yet again, I tell you what to do. It's no different than how we live our lives every day and how we're governed every day. They just give it to you and you're supposed to accept it. And then we take that energy and we bring it into our households, and specifically in our families. And so heaven forbid someone comes up with an idea and something that you didn't think of. Heaven forbid if they just wanted to look at a model from what other people do and how they amass success and wealth and say, I'm not coming up with something new. I'm just borrowing the model that they have. And we sit and say, oh, no, you can't do that. And all the different reasons of why you can't do it, as opposed to saying, well, oh, we don't have enough money. Okay, but we have good credit. You have good credit. So why don't you piggyback me on, put me on your credit like everyone else does to ensure the growth of their families and what their businesses are and what that sacrifice is. But as long as everybody has independent credit, that's what we want, because it's all about us and our group. I want to be the best one. I want to be the big fish. I want to be the one. Hello? What does I get you? I is but one letter in the collective. It has to be better if we want to be better. But you have to ask yourself if you really want to be better. To whom much is given, much is required. Knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power. Shared knowledge is most powerful. And so that's where we are today. I just want you to look at it. Question why you think the way that you think. And then you compare that to what people tell you. And then the bigger picture, especially if you have children, those of you who have children and family members, what are you teaching them? What does that look like for you? Are you showing them sacrifice? Are you showing them the commitment to family by any means necessary when it's hard and when it's rough and when you don't have to be selfish? Are you teaching them selflessness for the good of the group? That we have a plan and we have to commit to it by any means necessary? And even if you didn't come up with it, but you know it's better than where you grew up and how you grew up and understanding the dysfunctionalities that came up in your households and within your communities. But if you have a model that shows you something different, do you question how they can sit and tell you something just like El Chapo? I mean, that is not the best example and model that they can sit and say that this is wrong, but what are they condoning on this side? What other example do you need? And then you wonder why. Then you want to go back and forth and sit and argue and think that a local government, please, they indoctrinate you into government. You know that when you get selected and elected into office and they swear you in, then they put you through a training, right? So they train you on what you're supposed to do as a city council person. You're trained on when you go to state rep and the Senate and the Congress. You're trained on what it is. And so they indoctrinate you into having a mindset of what you're supposed to believe, of how you can do things, how you can't do things, what are the parliamentary procedures and what it looks like. I implore a majority of us, we don't even understand what the roles are that we're trying to seek. How many of you have read the charter where you are, if you are in political space? How many of you, if you're in corporate America, have read your corporate rules or corporate manual, how things are governed? How many of you, if you're in a space where you have the option of buying stock and you know how you can maximize your income and the profit sharing opportunities in that space to create wealth for you? Because your salary is but your salary, but you are making and creating a wealth line for the corporations and the entities that you work for. How many of you that you are working on the line in the plant and you have stock in the company? How many of you believe that you can actually create and have wealth? And everyone, on that note, I'll be gone next week because I'll be at a conference, a cannabis conference in California, because I am determined I will not let this opportunity pass by. And I don't care if anyone ever supports it. You don't ever have to support it. But the business of cannabis is real. Anytime I told you the forecast of Forbes and CBD, we're not talking about THC, we're talking about CBD, is a $20 to $24 billion industry within the next 5 years, and you think that I'm not going to have the information to be able to create something that maximizes this opportunity? It only comes through once in a lifetime. Because in a minute, it's saturated. In a big minute, big pharma, big business, just like they're coming in, you just saw with Purdue Pharma and OxyContin and the like, all of them are now transferring over into the cannabis hemp space as well. So they're going to push you out. So I just want you to realize that you have to seize opportunities and you have to seize moments, however it's presented to you. And you have to understand why they tell you that you can't, especially when they turn around and do the same thing. That's the whole bias yet again. Because they believe that you're just going to believe what they say. You're not going to question what they say because we're not taught to question. We're just taught to do what they say. And so today I just want us to be a little more. I want us to think out. I want us to think, not just regurgitate information. I want us, again, I'm going to recall the definition of bias: prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another. I believe that we are most biased against each other. And I just want you to think about that as you interact with people today, as people interact with you, as you look at individuals, if you can do something to help someone that looks like you, because that is, the truth is, that's you. That's you. It's no different than how we started the conversation. If when they see a black man, I don't care what your pedigree is, your whatever, no one asks you any of that. They look at the color of your skin and they already come up with perceptions of who you are. We do that amongst each other. Just think about it, you all. And make the decision, determine if you want to be better and do more. Be better for you. Understand what it is and be committed to creating an opportunity and a space and a conversation where we can just at least talk about it. You can think about it, you can talk about it in the truth for what it is, and then we can identify resources that, if you so choose to use, can be viable solutions for you. And I believe that is what our time is. I appreciate the time that you've given me today. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't take it for granted. And so our time is up. I'll miss you. I'll be gone for a week. So maybe at that time, of course, they're going to replay some of the shows, and I appreciate that. And they will decide which ones are going to be best, I guess, depending on the climate and what that looks like. But in the midst of all of that, I just want you to think about it. I want you to understand what is going on around you, who it benefits. And as Albert Einstein said in the onset, bias against the Negro is the worst disease from which the society of our nation suffers. And then the last quote by Confucius is, "A gentleman can see a question from all sides without bias. A small man is biased and can see a question only from one side." I want us to be able to look at all sides, all angles, up and down, back and forth, what's coming behind us and what's in front of us. Because at the end of the day, if you don't understand what it is, you will be your worst enemy. It's not everybody else. It's who you understand yourself to be, and then how you look at others, especially those that look like you. So everyone, that's our time for today. I pray that you have been educated, enlightened, and empowered. Please speak to someone that you don't know when you walk past them today. Make a connection. Don't live in a space of bias because they might look different than you or whatever the case may be. We're more alike than you know. You have to understand what motivates those that would have us to believe that we're so different from each other. Take care. Make your moments matter. Make today amazing. I'll see you when I get back.